体の大部分は機械なのでパーツさえあればすぐに。
変わってんなお前。
先生はどのようなパーツを使っているのですか？
使ってねえよ。
じゃあその頭部の肌色の装甲は？
いやこれ肌だから。
いやしかしそれでは先生が若くしてハゲているということに。
ハゲてんだよ、なんなんだてめえは。
Hey everybody, welcome to another lesson of Learning Japanese. Today we're going to cover another anime line of the day. We're going to be taking a line from, or a series of line, a part of a dialogue basically, from the show One Punch Man, and we're going to be taking it from the second episode of this show. So what we're going to cover is this kind of comedic exchange between Saitama and Genos, where he's talking about how he can repair himself pretty easily because most of his body is mechanical. Then he asks Saitama what parts does he use, what mechanical parts does he use. He says he doesn't use any. Then he questions him, then what's that skin-colored armor on your head there? That's my skin. And then Geno says, but then that would mean you're bald even though you're so young.
体の大部分は機械なのでパーツさえあればすぐに。
変わってんなお前。
先生はどのようなパーツを使っているのですか？
使ってねえよ。
じゃあその頭部の肌色の装甲は？
いやこれ肌だから。
いやしかしそれでは先生が若くしてハゲているということに。
ハゲてんだよ、なんなんだてめえは。
Alright, so this exchange here is going to consist of basically 4 lines per person. So 4 lines from Genos, 4 lines from Saitama. We're going to be focusing on Genos' lines because Saitama's lines are kind of just very short responses that are supposed to be comedic, short answers to his questions. So what we'll do is we'll probably break down 2 of the lines that Genos says because those are the bulkier sentences. And for the rest of the lines, we'll just do quick translations for them. We won't really go into a word-for-word breakdown. And so luckily the first line in the dialogue we have here is going to be one of the ones that we're going to break down. It's going to start with, my body is mostly mechanical, so as long as I have parts, I can quickly rebuild myself. Karada no daibubun wa kikai na no de, paatsu sae areba sugu ni.
体の大部分は機械なのでパーツさえあればすぐに。
So let's break down this sentence bit by bit. First up, we're going to start with the word here, karada, which is a very common word. It just means basically body. So he's describing his own body here. Karada is going to be the first noun in a noun of a noun modification. The noun of a noun modification here is being instigated by this particle no here because that's what we use. So we use a noun, no noun. And the second noun we see is going to be daibubun. This is going to be our first vocabulary word. We didn't include karada on the list because it's a pretty darn common word. Daibubun is kind of a more uncommon word. It means majority. So then karada no daibubun here is going to translate to basically a majority of my body. We're going to be marking that noun of a noun modification with the particle wa because it's the topic. So we're going to mark it as the topic. And now what we're simply going to do is we're going to say it is something. It is a noun. The noun that we're going to use is going to be kikai, which means machine. This is our second vocabulary word here. It means machine. So karada no daibubun wa kikai is going to basically mean most of my body is machine, or a majority of my body is machine. More naturally, of course, my body is mostly mechanical. This is basically the first clause in this sentence. We're now going to use a grammar pattern that is the node grammar pattern. It means basically because. So because we're using this with a noun, essentially, with the kikai here, we need to plug in this other particle na before we use node. So na node is just both going to mean because. And so what we've done is basically said because my body is mostly mechanical, and now we're going to state the thing that is because of that. So we move on and we see the next word is patsu. This is just going to be the katakana word for parts, so English parts basically. Next up we have the particle that is sae. This is a grammar pattern in and of itself basically. It is going to translate to basically only or just. The nuance here is basically you only need something, so only need parts, and we'll see that the need is fulfilled by the verb after it, which is areba. This is the conditional ba form, which is a grammar form, conjugational form of the verb aru, which means basically to exist, to have, to be. So then patsu sae areba is basically going to translate to as long as I have parts, or as long as there are parts. So with the ba form, you're basically saying if you have parts, or as long as you have parts, that isn't quite gonna finish your statement, right? So it has to go on. We have this adverbial phrase, sugu ni. Sugu means basically quickly, so sugu ni means quickly. But you'll notice here that there's nothing after that, which is kind of weird, but this is a pretty common thing in the Japanese language where they won't finish the sentence because what you're about to say is so easily implied from what you've already said, the context of what you've said. So even though it ends here, the implication is that as long as I have parts, I can rebuild myself quickly. So that part of I can quickly rebuild myself is what would be right here, but since it's implied so much, they just drop it. Okay, so that's the end of Genos' first line. Right after that, we have Saitama's response to that, which is a very simple phrase of Kawatte na omae. I just noticed that there's a typo right here. We don't need this extra O right here, so let's just cross that out. But basically what this is just saying is, you're a weird one. This is a kind of
変わってんなお前
special conjugation of the phrasing of kawatteiru, which means unusual. Here it's being said as kawatten. The na is the sentence ending particle, and omae just means you. So it's basically just saying you're unusual, aren't ya? Now we move on to Genos' response to this, his second line. It's a pretty easy phrase. We're not going to break it down word by word. Sensei wa dono yo na patsu o tsukatte iru no desu ka? This is basically asking, what sort of parts do you use? Sensei, we'll translate sensei into master as opposed to something like teacher.
先生はどのようなパーツを使っているのですか？
So you'll see we have the sensei, the wa, the dono yona, which is what kind of, patsu again to mean parts, direct object marker o, the verb tsukau, which means to use in its te iru form, and then the no desu ka to kind of turn it into a question. Breezing past that, we now have Saitama's next response, tsukate ne yo, and this is gonna mean basically I don't use it, and it refers to parts.
使ってねえよ
This is the verb tsukau again, to use, but it's in its te form plus the negative, so I don't use, and then the yo sentence ending particle for kind of emphasis or explanatory nuance. Now back to Genos' response. じゃあその頭部の肌色の装甲は? This is gonna translate to, huh? Then what's that skin-colored armor on your head there?
じゃあその頭部の肌色の装甲は?
The ja is just basically saying then. Sono demonstrative adjective that means that, referring to this word right here, which is toubu, our vocabulary word, means head or cranium. It's kind of a more formal scientific form. It's part of a noun modification instigated by this no here. Hadairo is going to translate to skin colored. Hada is skin, iro is color, so skin colored. Another noun of a noun modification, it's basically nested now. We have another no here. And then the last noun that we're using it is soukou, which is going to translate to armor. So toubu no hadairo no soukou is going to translate to skin colored head armor, basically. And so that's like basically one whole entity now, this noun of a noun modification. And we're using the topic marker wa to mark this whole thing as the topic. And you end the sentence with just wa to kind of be like, what is that? So it's a question. Now on to Saitama's response again. Yeah, kore hada dakara. This is just gonna be, that's my skin, or this is my skin. Ya is just kind of like saying no, or something along those lines. It's hard to explain the nuance here. Kore, of course, means this, demonstrative noun. Hada means skin, like we said, we derive it from the hadairo. And then the dakara is just mean because, but it's a kind of different nuance. Because is used a lot of times to, I don't know how to explain it, but dakara. But yeah, you wouldn't really use the word because in the translation of this. You're just saying like, this is just my skin.
いやこれ肌だから
Alright, so now let's move on to Genos' last line, and this is probably the line that we're focusing on this lesson.
いやしかしそれでは先生が若くしてハゲているということに。
So you'll see that we have the yeah again here. Again, this is kind of hard to explain. It would literally translate to like no, but just in the context of a conversation, basically you'll just say it when like the person hasn't really understood what you were trying to do or say. So while the word no wouldn't always fit that context, just think of it like that. So after that, we have the word shikashi, which is going to translate to basically but or however. You'll see in our translation, we start it with that word. After that, we have this phrasing, sore dewa. This is a common expression that basically means well then, or in that case, or if that's so. In our translation, you'll see we just have then. That would mean. We have the word sensei. Again, we're going to turn this into master as opposed to teacher. We have the particle ga to mark it as the subject. Next up, we have another kind of common expression or set expression, wakaku shite, and this is going to translate to basically while young. It's basically the e adjective wakai, which means young. Drop the final e, add the ku here to turn it into the conjunctive or connective form, adding shite. And that's the grammar behind it, but basically it is kind of a set expression that means while young. Next we have the word hage. This is going to mean bald. Here it's being used as a verb, so hageru, but the hageru is in turn conjugated into the te form. So hagete plus iru here to basically form that grammar pattern that is the te form of a verb plus iru to either mean habitual action, ongoing action, or completed action. And in this case, it's completed. So as opposed to going bald, it is have become bald, basically. After that, we have, this word, toyu, which is very confusing. It's being used in conjunction with koto here. This is a very hard thing to explain. In this sentence, it's basically just going to translate to that. If we took the time to explain it, it would just be a very long lesson. So yeah, it's worthy of a lesson on its own. In this case, we're just gonna leave it at this. The ni here is indicating that this sentence as just like this one, it's gonna be left open-ended because it doesn't need to be finished because you kind of just know what he means already without him saying the final part. So let's wrap it up, this whole sentence right here. いやしかしそれでは先生が若くしてハゲているということに then that would mean that you're bald or sensei is bald even though you're so young or you're bald despite being so young.
いやしかしそれでは先生が若くしてハゲているということに。
And then we move to Saitama's last line right here, and he says ハゲてんだよ何なんだてめえは and this is just gonna be basically ハゲる again, bald, te form. He's not going to use iru. He uses a different kind of style of speech because he's more not formal, because Geno speaks to him with formality because he considers him his master, his teacher. Saitama does not. So instead of hagete iru, hageten. Copula dar here, end it. Yo, sentence ending particle to add explanation, emphasis. So, yeah, I'm bald is basically what we're going to translate that to. Nan nanda, common phrase that means basically what? What's this? What the heck? So what is what we're going to translate that to. Then the teme, second person pronoun that means you. Pretty insulting way to refer to someone. Then the wa. So our natural translation is going to be like, so what? You got a problem with that? The more literal translation would be something like, what's with you? And yeah, that's gonna be the final line in this conversation right here. Let us review it from the very beginning.
体の大部分は機械なのでパーツさえあればすぐに。
変わってんなお前。
先生はどのようなパーツを使っているのですか？
使ってねえよ。
え？じゃあその頭部の肌色の装甲は？
いやこれ肌だから。
いやしかしそれでは先生が若くしてハゲているということに。
ハゲてんだよ、なんなんだてめえは。
So first line right here. 体の大部分は機械なのでパーツさえあればすぐに ... My body is mostly mechanical, so as long as I have parts ... implied part right here, I can quickly rebuild myself. So Geno says that, explaining his whole robot deal. Saitama responds with a simple Kawatte na omae. This is gonna be you're an odd one. Genos then asks him, Sensei wa dono yona patsu o tsukatte iru no desu ka? What sort of parts do you use, Master? Because, Master is so damn strong, he must be using some kind of mechanical parts, right? Tsukatte ne yo. I don't use any, he says. Genos, surprised by this fact, じゃあその頭部の肌色の装甲は? Huh? Then what's that skin-colored armor on your head there? いやこれ肌だから. This is my skin. So like I was saying earlier about the while this like normally translates to something like no, you can't really answer no to a question that isn't a yes-no question. He says, then what's that skin-colored armor on your head there? You don't say no to that. So the better way to construe it is basically you just say it when the person has like missed your point or there's still a misunderstanding. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like no. And so that's why we see it again here, because he says, Saitama tells him that it's his skin, but he's still confused, He's like, we are not on the same page. So he just says, yeah, as well. いやしかしそれでは先生が若くしてハゲているということに. But then that would mean that you're bald despite being so young. And last but not least, Saitama, with the clincher to the comedic moment here. ハゲてんだよ、何なんだてめえは. Yeah, I'm bald, so what? You got a problem with that?
体の大部分は機械なのでパーツさえあればすぐに。
変わってんなお前。
先生はどのようなパーツを使っているのですか？
使ってねえよ。
じゃあその頭部の肌色の装甲は？
いやこれ肌だから。
いやしかしそれでは先生が若くしてハゲているということに。
ハゲてんだよ、なんなんだてめえは。
Alright, so that's gonna complete the conversation. We do need to do one more thing, because as funny as that was, maybe it wasn't. Maybe I'm just laughing by myself here. Either way, we gotta review the educational elements that we encountered. So let's review the grammar patterns that we encountered in this conversation. I'm sure there are a lot of them. Right here, not of a noun modification. Right here, nanode, node, grammar pattern that means because, basically. It's kind of the more polite version. Sae, the particle that means only or just, commonly used with the ba form, which is right here. Conditional ba form, basically if. Te form of a verb, sentence ending particle na. Yo na, which means like, so something, yo na is going to be like that something. In this case, we're using a question word though, so it's like what? Te form again, used with iru to basically mean continuous action, habitual action right there. Sentence ending particle again with the no and the ka technically. Te form again, used with the negative form this time. Instead of nai though, it's ne because we're talking casual here. Noun of a noun modification, noun of a noun modification. Stacking them right here. Kara to mean because, the conjunction. It's basically the same thing as this, but this is more polite. Some set phrases here. Shikashi means but or however. Soredewa means then, well then, in that case, something like that. Wakaku shite. This is a set expression that means while young. This kind of form can be observed with other adjectives as well, but you'll just basically have to come across those to get used to them. Te form again with hageru plus iru again. This time it's more completed action than continuous or habitual. Toyu koto, the very complex concept that this video does not completely explain, so definitely worth checking that out. Last te form, I'm thinking the sentence ending particle to add explanation. Yo sentence ending particle. And I think there's nothing too much in here. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something more than 10, I bet. Alright, so that is going to wrap it up for this lesson. Covering One Punch Man episode 2, or like one of the conversations from the episode, not the whole episode. So with that said and done, let's replay the whole clip one more time. Hopefully you'll comprehend most, if not all of it.
体の大部分は機械なのでパーツさえあればすぐに。
変わってんなお前。
先生はどのようなパーツを使っているのですか？
使ってねえよ。
じゃあその頭部の肌色の装甲は？
いやこれ肌だから。
いやしかし それでは先生が若くしてハゲているということに。
ハゲてんだよ、なんなんだてめえは。
Alright, that's gonna wrap it up for this episode of Anime Line of the Day. Remember, if there were grammar patterns mentioned for this line, they'll be mentioned in the description or the pinned comment below with links to the individual lessons on them. You can also probably find them in the playlist of our complete grammar video series shown on the screen right here alongside our anime playlist. And last but not least, don't forget to try to translate the bonus line we provided. Leave your translation in a comment below. Check out our Patreon, like the video, and subscribe. With all that said and done, see you next time.